Hi. I don't know what I'm doing. How's it going out there? Welcome to the stream. Really just doing this just for fun, just to test it out. Haven't done a live stream in a while, so yeah, I just thought I'd set one up and see if anybody joins. Looks like we've got Abdullah Mixer. Let me know how you pronounce your name. If it's Mixer Abdullah or the other way around. Or thank you for being here. Hopefully some other people will join eventually, but who knows. Yeah, so hopefully I'm going to start a relatively frequent live stream, just because it seems like that's what everybody's doing these days. Let me know also if you can hear me. I think I've got the audio set up, but you know, if you're out there, just give me a thumbs up or something if audio's coming through okay. I actually just switched over to XSplit. I've been using OBS for a long time, but I was having trouble getting OBS working anymore with my a7SIII Mini on Windows. Just couldn't get the a7 and OBS to play together, so I just actually downloaded XSplit last night and got that all set up this morning. So hopefully that's working okay. Yeah, so really, like I said, hoping to start a relatively frequent live stream, I guess tentatively called Cameras and Mics Oh My, which I know is kind of a dumb name, but I don't have any other ideas right now, so we'll just go with that for now. And I guess the reason that I decided to do this today, or this week, is that I just finally got the Sony a7S III, and I'm going to be selling the GH5s. Shout out to Mac and Cheese Media, the soon-to-be buyers of my lovely Panasonic GH5s. It's going to a good new home, so thank you to them. I was happy not to have to go onto eBay or any other online seller and deal with all that stuff, so just giving it to some friends of mine. So yeah, that was pretty much the idea behind today's stream, talking about cameras, which is what I like to talk about, and Q&A if anybody has any questions about, you know, switching cameras or Sony versus Panasonic versus whatever. We're going from a micro four thirds camera, the GH5s, over to a full frame camera in the Sony a7S III. If you have any questions about sensor size and all that, you know, it's a pretty big debate on YouTube at least. I'm sure I've got some thoughts on that. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Doesn't look like anyone has any questions. So I'm not actually switching from micro four thirds to full frame. I've actually been on full frame. I've had Sony camera pretty much from the beginning. This camera right here that I have on the desk is the Sony a7 III, and I've had it for about a year. And prior to the a7 III, which you can see here, I had the Sony a7S II, and I've had that, been really with full frame Sony cameras for longer than I've had the micro four thirds camera, the GH5s. And so yeah, it's not like switching or upgrading, because I've had both of them for several years. And I've also shot a whole bunch of stuff on APS-C size sensors or Super 35mm. So it's not necessarily about sensor size, you know, one being better than the other. I know I think that's a pretty constant debate on YouTube about. Oh, here we got a question from Gumbo Space. Well, first of all, thank you, Gumbo Space, for joining. Appreciate it. Good to have at least a couple of you guys out there, guys or girls. So is the video quality coming out of the a7S III better than that of the GH5? I would say by and large, yes. I haven't used the a7S III a whole lot. I just got it less than a week ago. I shot actually just one YouTube video on it, my last video, talking about that softbox. So that was the first and only video I've shot on the a7S III so far, and otherwise I've just been kind of messing with it. But I do think that the video quality can be better, and I think the sensor size has something to do with that. Just being a larger sensor, more sensitive to light, kind of gathers in just more information and more detail, potentially, than the smaller sensor camera. But it's not as though the quality of the smaller sensor camera is bad. It definitely needs more light, I think. By and large, you can get away with shooting in lower light situations and still get a pretty decent image out of a larger sensor camera. Although in my opinion, shooting with a lot of light is always a good idea regardless of what kind of camera you're shooting on. But going back several years now, the vast majority of YouTube videos that I've shot in the last year to 2 years have been on the GH5s. A lot of them have been shot with the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is also a micro four thirds sensor. I'm pretty sure that these two cameras have the exact same sensor in them, the Pocket 4K and the GH5s. And the video quality is fantastic. And another thing that I do, which you'll see a lot of people do when they have the GH5 or other micro four thirds cameras, is pair them with a speed booster, which is what I don't shoot on a lot of native micro four thirds lenses. I tend to just shoot on Canon full frame lenses. And in order to do that, I use this speed booster, which essentially kind of makes it like a bigger sensor camera than it really is. So I think that helps as well. Hopefully that answers your question. I think where you'll see the biggest difference, and where I've seen a difference so far, and like I said, I haven't used it a whole bunch, the a7S III, is it's just the noise. There can be noise with the smaller sensor cameras in underexposed parts of your image. You don't want the whole thing to be underexposed, but in this scene right here, like this area back here, shooting on smaller sensor camera, those underexposed parts would tend to be noisier. Another factor though, aside from just the sensor size, is actually noise reduction. The Sony has like noise reduction built, well, they all do, except for the Black Knight. It probably doesn't have noise reduction, but they have noise reduction built into the profiles. The GH5 allows you to control how much noise reduction you want in all the profiles. The Sony doesn't. So that's another factor, that the Sony might just be, aggressively reducing noise. But you're welcome, Jimbo, for the long-winded answer. There's a big price difference too. If you're not familiar, the a7S III is a $3,500 camera. The GH5s came out in early 2018 or late 2018. I can't remember exactly when, at $2,500. But now you can get it for under $2,000. So there's a pretty big difference in price too. I also do, like I said, I've got this a7 III, and there's a big difference in my opinion from image quality between the a7 III and the a7S III, and that has to do with the codecs, the bit rates, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Sensor size is the same, but I feel like the image quality coming out of the a7S III is a lot better than the a7 III and the older a7S II and all that stuff as well. A lot of factors. So yeah, I guess the reason that I decided to sell my GH5s and get the Sony a7S III, I just really been excited for this camera because, like I mentioned earlier, I've had full frame Sony cameras for several years. I started with the a7S II back in 2017, I believe, and really loved it. But the features of that camera were eclipsed by the GH5 and then the GH5s. I felt like these are, aside from YouTube, I do client work as well, and the features in the GH5 and the GH5s are just way better for like professional or like paid work than what you got in the older Sony cameras. The a7S III was the first one that really matched and exceeded the quality and the amount of options that you had for recording video that the GH5 and the GH5s had for several years. So I was excited to see that. there's still a lot of things that you can do in the GH5 cameras, like features that they offer that still aren't in Sony. I think Sony's like kind of segmenting their cameras a lot still. They don't want to poach buyers from their higher end professional video cameras like the FX6 and the FX9, whereas Panasonic's just like, buy our cameras, whatever they are, they're happy to have people buy them. So they like put everything in there. They don't really hold back in what they offer, whereas Sony's still holding back in terms of some professional features. But I feel like image quality wise and codecs, frame rates and resolutions, this is like the best right now. So yeah. And I'm not, like I mentioned, I'm not a sensor size snob. I think there's a place for different size sensors, and one's not always better, quote unquote, better than the others. They all have advantages and disadvantages. And I'm also a big movie fan. And looking at the history of movies have been shot on film size, like different film sizes. And now that they are by and large shot on digital, they started out on the Arri Alexa and the Red Cinema cameras and Sony Cinema cameras were Super 35mm APS-C size sensors, so smaller than this. It's only in the last few years that a lot of them have gone to full frame and even larger sensors now. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm starting to like really appreciate what some people are doing with the bigger sensors on like big Hollywood productions and Netflix and Amazon and things like that. And not that I'm doing anything like that, or not that I ever will, but I don't know. There's just a cool look that you get with these. I think there's a possibility of getting kind of a more three-dimensional look than you get with smaller sensors. But yeah, it just depends on the lenses a lot of times too that you use. I also have, like, I've had the GH5s for about, I guess 2.5 years. So I've got a lot of accessories for it. So I've got a cage, obviously, that I don't have it in right now because I wanted to clean the camera up before I sold it. I also have the XLR adapter module that goes in. It plugs right into the hot shoe that you can get 2 XLR inputs right into the camera without having to sync audio. And they have one, Sony has one similar, does the same thing, but they're really hard to find right now. The stock is pretty limited, and they're way more expensive on Sony. Sony's version is like usually around $600 to $700. I've seen it on sale for like $500, whereas the one that you get for Panasonic cameras is like $300 to $400. So I'm sure eventually I'd like to get one for the Sony, but definitely not something that I'm going to run out and buy right now. Just because it's, a lot of times Sony's accessories tend to be more expensive. I do have my Sony a7 III. You might not be able to see it, but I have a little half cage on it because I didn't want a full cage. I kind of like the grip that's built into the camera, so eventually I'm probably going to get a half cage for the a7S III as well. I know Tilta and both Small Rig and Tilta make one. So they're only about 30 to 50 bucks. So they're not too bad. I'm going to get that eventually. And I think also, I've got a bunch of, I've had a Metabones adapter for Sony cameras since I had the Sony a7S II, because I just got all Canon lenses to start with. And so I still have that, and I can use my Canon 16 to 35 and my Canon 24 to 105 on the Sony cameras as well. But then you don't really have autofocus. And that's the other thing that I was kind of looking forward to, switching to the a7S III, is just the autofocus, which is something that I've never really had with the GH5s. And I've got 2 native Sony lenses. You can see I've got this one here. This is the 20mm 1.8, and I've also got the 35mm 1.8. And I shot my first YouTube video just going autofocus only, and it was like phenomenal. It works so well. I've never loved autofocus on the a7 III. I've tried to use it a few times for YouTube videos, and like the one time it worked really well, and like a bunch of times it didn't. So I was curious to see how well. I mean, I know it works well. People have been playing it up for about a year now almost. But yeah, I'm really impressed. So eventually I'll probably sell off my Canon lenses and go Sony E mount. But yeah, that's another thing that's going to take some time. But thank you, Mixer Abdullah, for the nice thumbs up again. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's too bad there's not more people who could ask questions. Keep this thing moving. I think I was gonna say something, but I forget. Yep, I don't know. Someone asked me a question. Come on, let's do it. You can ask me questions about microphones as well. My channel, I've been doing a lot of microphone stuff. Whatever you want to ask questions about relating to YouTube, video creation, cameras, mics, client work, you know, it doesn't have to be relegated to just these two cameras or whatever. Thank you, Gumbo Space. Really appreciate that. Gonna try to keep it up. I've got some stuff to review. Companies started sending me some things. I've got a couple microphones to review. I've got this. That's the TZ Audio Products, I think it's called. The Stellar X2. It's not a new microphone. There's already a bunch of videos on it, but it's like a reseller sent that to me. Not even the company itself wanted me to make a video about how to hook it up to smartphones, which you can't do. But, yeah, I don't know what I'll do with that. And I've got some lights to review and a couple other things. So we'll keep it moving. Let me know too what you want to see. I feel like my channel's still trying to figure out like what people want from the channel or why they watch it. I feel like I have like maybe people watch it for cameras, and then some people watch it for the camera stuff, and then other people watch it for the microphone stuff, and I don't know that those two groups of people really overlap. So yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. Oh, another good thing about, since I already had the a7 III, I already had some batteries, so I didn't have to go out and buy all new batteries for the Sony a7S III. One thing I do need to get is media, because since this camera does shoot at such high frame rates and high bit rates in 4K, it needs really fast SD cards, if not even the CF Express cards, which I'm not going to buy anytime soon, because there's only one recording mode and frame rate that you need that for. But I have, I've got some V60 SD cards that the label's pretty worn off on that one. So with the Panasonic, with the GH5 and the GH5s, the fastest cards you need for that is V60 cards. So you can shoot 10-bit 422 internally, 4K 30, and all you need is V60. With the a7S III, on the other hand, you need V90 cards in order to get 4K 120 for sure, and then maybe 4K 60 at some of the higher bit rates, and you also need them for the 1080p 240 frame rates mode. So right now, all I have is V60 cards, which allow me to shoot in 4K 24, 4K 30, and I think 4K 60 at some of the lower codecs and quality and bit rates, etc. I'm really impressed with, like I said, Sony in the past, like they gave you no options for internal recording in their cameras. It was like 4K 100 megabits and then 1080p 50 megabits per second, and that was it. This camera gives you so many that I don't even know what they all are. You can record in H.264, H.265. You can record in all-I, long GOP, like so many different record options. It's really cool that they finally did that. So, but yeah, I've been looking at like trying to find some reasonably priced V90 cards. They're definitely cheaper than the CF Express cards, but they're still pretty pretty expensive, and I'm trying to decide if I want to just go with a 64 gig card because you can get those for about $60. But then as soon as you go to 128, it you don't really they double in price. It's not like you can get a little bit of a savings by going with a 128 versus like 264s, but they're pretty much double the price. I actually went to my local Best Buy to see if they might have one because I sometimes you get sick of like ordering stuff from Amazon. Fuck Jeff Bezos. Um, you know, all these people are getting so much money and whatever. Not like Best Buy needs any more money, but I went to my local Best Buy just to see if they had a V90 card, and they did. 128 gig for $400. It was like, what in the hell? It was like a $350 markup from what you can buy them online for. So didn't get that. Yeah. So anyway, need to get a few things for the A7S III, but that'll happen eventually. Oh, am I play? Is music playing right now? That's not. No. Okay, I would be hearing it. I'm going crazy. Yeah, I turned it down. Never mind. Well, um, I don't know. I can't keep just rambling here. So if there's not going to be any questions or any more people watching, I'll probably just wrap this up. This is more just to gauge interest and to get everything set up. So hopefully in the future, if I can build more momentum and get more people interested, it won't take me an hour to get set up, and I can just launch into these kind of more easily. So it's kind of a test, and yeah, I'll keep going, I guess, for a little bit, but probably gonna wrap it up before too long. If no one has any questions, then I don't really know how to keep going rambling about this. If you have any questions also about, I've got this kind of like free floating camera here. You can see a main camera back there that I'm shooting on is the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, and I'm using this Hollyland wireless transmission system, so I can just pick up that camera and show different things around my office. Have any questions about that? Feel free to ask. The pocket cameras are not mine. I borrowed these from a friend of mine, like I think back in the spring, and I've had them. I've had them for the majority of the year. I keep going like, "Hey, man, do you want your cameras back?" But he doesn't need them, so I've had them, and I've been using these to shoot a lot of my YouTube videos this year. The Usually just set the 6K up as kind of my main cam, and then I'll put the 4K off to the side as kind of a close up. And before I started using the 6K, I was actually pairing the GH5s and the Pocket 4K a lot too, um, and that worked out pretty well. So yeah, these are not all my cameras. So I'm a little bit crazy with spending money, but not that crazy. Also, if you have any questions about streaming, I referenced earlier that I've been having so many problems with OBS and the a7 Mini, which is what I'm using to switch the camera angles, and I just can't get the a7 to show up in OBS anymore. I've had to I've tried to roll back the version, like the OBS version, to an older one, and like sometimes that would work for a little bit, and then eventually it would just stop showing up with the older version. So it didn't really seem to matter which version I was using. And then, so I'm on a Windows PC right now, but I also have the Mac Mini, which you can see. I don't know if that was probably not a super exciting thing to see, but anyway, I have that, and I can get OBS and the ATEM to play nicely on the Mac Mini. But then it seems like with some update or something, I can't get audio. I can't get audio playback on the Mac Mini to work. It's just like um, it just screeches and breaks up. It's like I don't know what's going on with that. So I was having a whole lot of problems like trying to get a live stream set up with either the Windows PC or the Mac Mini, and I was like just googling what's another what's another live streaming software that doesn't cost a ton of money. And I decided to check out XSplit because there is a free version which is pretty decent. You just can only stream at 720p, which isn't really that big a deal to me. Oh wait, here we go. Oh, so the Native Strokes show. I love your name. I don't know what that's all about, but it sounds good. Sounds cool. He asks, or he she asks. Sorry, the Native Strokes show asks. Probably you might have already answered this, but what lens do you use for your current A cam? And I didn't. I think I pointed to it earlier, but that's the Canon 16 to 35 f2.8 version 2. So it's an older lens. I think it came out around the mid 2000s. So there's a version 3 out now. But yeah, it's an older lens, but yeah, it's still a really decent lens if you're needing a 16 to 35, which I really love wide angle. And I also do shoot a lot of real estate photography and videos. So I need at least a 16 millimeter wide angle lens for that. And I was able to find that at a local camera store for about $1,000. And I feel like the version 3 that's available now is probably close to 2,000, maybe $1,800. So it's quite a bit cheaper than getting the new one. But yeah, I love it. It's kind of soft. I don't think it was highly regarded as one of Canon's better lens designs, even when it came out. But for video, I don't mind a little bit of a softer lens, because video can be a little bit digital video can be a little bit harsh and overly sharp. So I think it works really well for that. And then also for real estate photography, it's just going to like MLS listings, so you don't necessarily need like the sharpest lenses out there. So anyway, that's what I'm using. Um, I would love to get probably a Sony. Like I was talking about earlier, I'd like to switch to Sony lenses, but I mean, I love having Canon lenses because you can just use them on everything. So I can use them on the GH5. I'm obviously using them on the Pocket 6K. I can use them on the Pocket 4K, and I can use them on the Sonys. So really, any older lens uh, can be adapted to pretty much all these new mirrorless cameras. So it's always good to have them because you never know which if you're going to stay on the same camera system. So I guess I will never get rid of them, but yeah, it's nice to have the native lenses. I've got this, uh, Sony 20 millimeter f1.8, which is awesome, but it's just not quite wide enough all the time. So having a 16 to 35 is cool. You are welcome. You're on the Ace. The Native Stroke Show says you're on the A7R2, which is awesome. That's still like a 42 megapixel camera with a 24 to 70 f2.8 for everything plus a 6300. Yeah. I've had a 24 to 70. I used to have the Tamron G2 24 to 70. But I dropped it and I broke it and I sent it back to Tamron to repair. And when I got it back, it still wasn't quite right. I think when you zoomed it, I think it was when you zoomed it, the image would kind of shift like upward. So it was like I couldn't use it. You could use it for photography because you can't see like if you zoom. But if you're using it for video and you actually zoom in your shot, like you could see the image kind of jump a little bit. So I sold it. Um, but I'm not a huge I mean, and this is in my opinion, and you can totally disagree with me. Oh, the G Master, sweet. That thing's insane. Super expensive. So that's great. That's cool. I'm not a huge fan of the 24 to 70 because I just feel like it's kind of a limited kind of in between range. So if you have a 16 to 35, you're kind of covered already from 24 to 35. Um, and then really all you're getting then is like 50 millimeters and then that kind of 70, which is like you're not even getting an 85. So what I have instead is a 24 to 105 f4. That's my other Canon lens. And I know it's only an f4, but I was using it on the GH5s with the speed booster, which knocked it down to an f2.5. So that, made it a pretty fast zoom lens at f2.5. And then you're getting more range on the long end, which I liked. And so now on the Sony's, it's going to be limited to an f4, which I feel like for full frame is good enough in terms of depth of field. It might be limiting a little bit in terms of light gathering abilities, but yeah, we'll see how that works out. But I mean, I've had 20. I also had the Lumix 12 to 35 for Micro Four Thirds, which is equivalent to 24 to 70, and I used it a ton. I'm not. Yeah, it's not a bad lens, but it's just not my favorite zoom lens focal range. But yeah, I love wide angle. I know it's not always the best thing to shoot everything on, but um, it's either I feel like I would like to get 16 to 35, and then I'll get a 50 millimeter prime, and then if I get another zoom, it'll be kind of like a more telephoto, like probably a 70 to 200, or maybe something even longer, because that's just such a niche lens. I don't really want to spend $2,000 on a 70 to 200, but I feel like I would spend like 13 or $1,400 eventually on like a 150 to 400, which or something even longer. But anyway, and I always go back and forth between primes and zooms. I started out with nothing but primes. I had a set of Rokinon Cine DS prime lenses. I had the 24, 35, 50, and 85. And when I was in film school, so um, and then when I graduated and I started doing more client stuff and a lot of live events, it made more sense to have zoom lenses so you could like replace that whole prime set with basically two zooms. So that's when I started looking into getting zooms, and they're just so versatile. Um, but now that I kind of have a decent zoom range, sorry, my dog's barking. You can probably hear that. I'm thinking about picking up a few more primes. I'd like to get a 50 and maybe an 85, and that'll probably be good. I'm definitely gonna miss the GH5s. It's been like the most. It's been the camera that I've done the most work with. Surprisingly, um, it's made me the most money. Even if people can be put off by the Micro Four Thirds, most people don't know what they're talking about. And yeah, it's just a really great camera. Like it's just really. I mean, image quality is fantastic. Codecs are fantastic, and it's just really well built and never fails. Pretty weather sealed. It's really tough and durable. The screen is better than the A7S III for sure. The EVF on the A7S III is amazing, but the back screen's not that great. And yeah, it's got dual card slots. Battery lasts a long time. No overheating ever because of the small sensor. It's got a variable frame rate mode, so you can shoot from 2 frames per second all the way up to 240 frames per second. You just do a lot of cool stuff with it. Um, and I'm glad it's going to a local production company that I work with. So maybe I'll even shoot with it again in the future. Who knows? Yeah, it's a really great camera. So no knock on Micro Four Thirds. You'll never hear me downplay or make fun of Micro Four Thirds shooters. Oh, audio in the video is a bit out of so I can't figure that out. I need to do some more research about how to get the audio and video to sync up on a live stream. I've been trying to mess with the offsets a bunch, but I just can't seem to figure it out. So yeah, thanks for letting me know that, and that's something I'll keep working on. And yeah, send me an email, and I'll check you out and see what your podcast is all about. I'd love to talk and do something. So thanks for that. Well, I made it 35 minutes. That's pretty surprising. I didn't expect to go that long. I'm glad a few people showed up to ask some questions. I really appreciate it to everybody who showed up and participated a little bit. And even if you didn't participate, just if you watched for some time, that's awesome. So I really appreciate it. I'm in my attic. It's really hot. And yeah, I guess I'll just wrap this up. So thank you. I really appreciate you watching and tuning in. So hopefully I'll see you again sometime in the future, and hopefully I'll figure out how to get everything synced up. I don't know if there's any music on here. Nope. Okay. That was awkward. See ya. Bye.